Hello, everybody. It's number 81 in Sounding the Shallows, and it's Bridget Plass here.
And, incredibly, it's Adrian Plass here as well. Although I think Bridget has managed very well over the last 2 weeks. I'm very grateful to her for still being with you. I think
I thought you were going to say still being with me.
Oh, still with me. Well, I'm quite glad you're still with me. I'm glad I'm with you. Yeah. I just want to start, actually, if nobody minds, by, apart from just saying hello, saying a really enormous thank you, because we've had some wonderful support. I mean, going back to the time I spent in hospital, for those who don't know, I had a serious operation a couple of weeks ago, and apart from the treatment I got, which was amazing, the response from people has been really tear-jerking. So much love and so much sympathy and prayers and all sorts of stuff. So thank you very much indeed.
Yeah, it meant a lot to me as well. Because, of course, you were there, for anybody who didn't know, because you had this bleed on your brain, didn't you, having clearly bumped your head very badly at some point. And one of the things that I mentioned in my recordings, I think, was that you said about a week before that you were having difficulty accessing your brain, which I thought was an odd thing to say at the time. But I realise now that was right, wasn't it? There was a barrier, there was a blood clot, so you actually couldn't properly access part of your brain.
I suppose that's true. I mean, I'm not expert in these things, but certainly I know I was slowing down significantly at that time, and I wasn't able to jump from one thing to another in my mind as I have been in the past. Mm-hmm. But hopefully with some rest and time, that will get better, I think.
Well, of course, whilst you were in hospital, you did have quite a lot of time to think. I mean, it was kind of thinking quiet time. You weren't really supposed to be using your brain, but I know you. I know there'll be all sorts of things gone through your mind.
Well, there were an awful lot of things. Some things were horrendous, I have to say. I mean, some of those experiences, and some were not, because there were some great people there, and I had some great times with some people there. But yeah, the whole business about thinking, I really lost track a bit of at one point of who I was, what I was, why I was, and all those important questions. And as far as faith is concerned and all that, I think on reflection and over the last couple of weeks while I've been home, one area really has come to mind, and that is that when I look back over 40 years of being involved with the church and the Christian faith and all that, the number of times there have been obstructions to freedom in that area, and also the number of times I discovered wonderful gates into a sort of freedom that I never imagined existed. And so I've kind of gone over those things, especially the positive things, because I think they're very good for us to hear, probably.
Well, what was one of them then?
Well, one was that years ago we started to read books by Paul Tournier.
Oh, we did, yes.
Who was, I think I'm right in saying, was a Swiss doctor who also was a counsellor, and not sure if he was a psychiatrist or not.
He wrote some amazing things about marriage, didn't he?
He did, yes.
I remember that.
Yes.
Yeah.
He said for women, marriage is like rowing a small boat around the island of their husband, looking for somewhere to land.
Yes.
I think that's what it was.
Yeah.
I have the faintest idea what he was talking about. But no, the thing that struck me in those days was that I read about an interview between Paul Tournier and someone who was a Christian and who was going through big troubles and getting all screwed up. And eventually Paul Tournier said, I said to him his conversion was all wrong. And
that's
what had gone wrong. And of course, conversion was one of the sort of sacred things in those days, especially in the evangelical church, still is. But you didn't question it, you didn't knock on it, you didn't make holes in it, you didn't take it to pieces. But actually, it is true that some people really do need to go back to the beginning and say, what was that? And in terms of being a real human being, what effect did it have on me? And have I perhaps misunderstood some aspects of what was going on? That sort of thing.
Yeah, it's interesting you're saying about barriers. I was thinking about that. I mean, one of the things about Paul Tournier is that he did make you kind of think He was very different from any of the other books that seemed to be around at the time. I mean, I was given a book, if you remember, called The Perfect Christian Woman, which was clearly a hint that I was far from being that. But there was
There
a
was a
way.
picture of her on the front cover, wasn't
She
there?
had very beautiful teeth.
Yeah.
There was a thing, wasn't there? Like you say, with conversion, it was very cut and dried. You said the prayer, you were in. You didn't say the prayer. Clearly, the idea, the thinking was you weren't in, and it was very kind of clear cut. But it wasn't opening your mind at all, really.
Well, it might have been for some, to be fair, but I think because of a sort of underlying fear, people were perhaps worried about questioning things that seemed to have got sorted, if you see what I mean.
Well, we were very into denominations, weren't we? And which denomination was the right denomination, and you couldn't really be in two. Do you remember that? There was a time when you really needed some help that wasn't perhaps accessible in the church that we were in. And the idea a little bit at the time was that you would find all the answers within your own denomination, and you didn't need to search or to open any gates anywhere else. Would that be true?
I suppose so, yeah. I mean, all I know is the effect when I did go somewhere different. And this is going to sound so ridiculous to some people, I think, but I went for a walk in the country with a man who was very high church.
No, you've got to go back a bit more.
All right, well,
that is not a whole story, class.
I had a breakdown, and
Yeah.
I was looking for light in the dark, really. And I don't know why I went off for this walk with this guy, but the old Adrian, I mean, from quite a while before that, would have said, well, yes, obviously we're very tolerant of those who think differently from us, but we don't want to get too tangled up with them. I mean, someone from the high church, for goodness sake. But that walk, where we just walked and talked as though we were real human beings, talking about faith not as a thing that you had accomplished or you'd collected, but as something that you could look at quietly and calmly and objectively. And even as we walked around, I remember very well near the Downs in Sussex, thinking, I've got a bit stuck. I've got a bit trapped. And this chap, whatever aspect of theology or churchmanship he belongs to, is opening a gate for me. He's showing me that it is right, possible, and really desirable to release yourself from tight little capsules of understanding and whatever else it is you've got yourself tied up by. So yeah, that was a gateway. Whether I kept going with that at the time, I don't know, but it was really, really important.
But those closed gates, if you like, I mean, we've talked barriers, closed gates, whatever, they were really around at the time, weren't they? Do you remember we did a Churches Together thing, and it was going to be a play that involved people from all denominations, and the theory was good, and there were lots of aspects of Churches Together that really worked. But this particular one, do you remember? The difficulty was that there was one denomination that couldn't be involved because the Catholics were involved.
That's right.
But although the Catholics were agreeing with it in principle, actually nobody in that particular church, which was quite small and most of the parishioners were quite elderly, didn't actually want to be in it. No. So there were people in the church that weren't allowed to be in it, wanting to be in it, but couldn't because the Catholic... I think I'll stop. I think I've said
just to make it even more ridiculous, some of the ones who weren't supposed to be in it were in it unofficially.
Well, they were allowed, yeah.
Well, I don't think they were allowed. They decided they were going to be in it. And people in the end do tend to vote with their feet.
Yeah.
Maybe there's not enough voting with your feet. I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, in recent years also, characters have popped up in the books I've written that are looking for gateways, and one of them, and I think we've got an extract from it here, haven't you?
Yeah.
Was a character called Mrs. Dufresne.
Well, the thing about Mrs. Dufresne, and this is in the Adrian Platt and the Church Weekend book, isn't it? And it was that the normal ways of thinking people should come in a particular way hadn't actually worked for this particular elderly lady. And I remember years ago, Adrian, you talking about how some people need to come through the back gate, if you
That's
like,
right, yeah.
the gate at the end of the garden, and
Through
just
the side
hang
door or
around
back gate,
in the garden a bit
Yeah,
before coming
that's
in.
right.
And that sometimes it's things like church weekends or gatherings that are social gatherings where people can kind of hang around in the garden. I'll just read you Mrs. Dufresne. I haven't read it for a long time, but I'll have a go. I am alone and lonely. Thomas was my friend and my husband, and we were not allowed to have children. Well, he was the first and very probably the last person to love me or to laugh with me and to hold me when the darkness that is deeper than night creeps into my soul. Well, no, I am awfully rich and well appointed. Right. Yes, but nowadays I feel like one of those grand, poorly maintained Edwardian mansions you see in oil-rich ex-Soviet republics. I am fading and cracking and subsiding like a house extension that sinks into the ground because all the moisture has been sucked from the clay beneath it. Oh, forgive me, that really is a quite disgusting metaphor. The thing is, I have been sure that there is no God and that I am lost. Well, this weekend has taught me something about myself I would not have believed possible. I have learned, rather to my own surprise, I have to say, that the seeds of belonging have been planted in me, by whose hands I have only the faintest notion. What manner of flowering should I anticipate? A deep but roseate mystery. I am, however, quietly pleased. Yes, very quietly, but very pleased.
Of course, the interesting thing about that is that she, in the course of this weekend she goes on, she doesn't become a Christian, but she takes the steps required for a little bit of her to change.
She does.
Enough to think it's possible to be part of something.
Yeah, it's the gate of belonging, really, isn't it? And I think sometimes in the church, and certainly maybe me in the past, I don't know about you, Adrian, but have kind of felt that it was important the other way round, that you had to kind of say the words and do the things and get through the gate in order to belong. And I now realise more and more that being allowed to belong and just wait for when you can do more than just belong socially or belong through friendship does have a value. It does give you an access, doesn't it?
Of course it does, and it's how you move into almost everything. But for some reason that gets foreshortened sometimes when it comes to faith. I'll tell you why this came to my mind particularly just this over recent days. There was quite a long program about the U2 song. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. Which that is the chorus, of course. I still haven't found what I'm looking for. I've seen this. I've seen that. I've been a.
And Bono is a Christian, isn't he?
Bono is a Christian, and when it was released, there were a number of people, Christians, who were very upset about it because they said, "Well, he has found what he's looking for. So what does he mean? He hasn't found what he's looking for." And this program was interviewing a number of people who had benefited enormously just by listening to those words, and I think it's outrageous that people can say, "I have found exactly what I'm looking for." I mean, even if you want to rest yourself on the absolute letter of the scripture law, we see through a glass darkly now. We do not understand. People enter areas of darkness and confusion and worry all the time. So when someone says with power and confidence, "I still haven't found what I'm looking for," that's not a negative response. It's a very, very positive one. And I can't tell you how passionately I thank God that people like Bono sang words like that.
You know what?
So good for
You know
us.
what? I think anybody who knows you will hear that you are back to being you. You feel
Probably.
passionate about it. You angry about
Dogmatic.
it. You're dogmatic. No, you're not. The opposite to dogmatic. You're saying that being too dogmatic doesn't really work, and it's very nice to hear you talking like that. Really.
Do you remember at Scargill, where we often have worked in Yorkshire, Scargill House? Do you remember the day we sent people out to take photos? Just to bring them back.
I think the idea was that people would go and really look at something, find somewhere, and not move from that spot, not go hunting around for something significant,
Actually,
but
that's
just
right,
go
I'd forgotten
somewhere
that. Yeah,
and
right.
look at the thing that was there, wherever they happened to end up. I think that was what it was, because so often on these things, people go off and well, including myself actually, and become distracted by trying to see something that is significant, or a parable, or something you can take back to talk about.
But the thing I remembered, which I know you will also remember, is a man who was there came back with a photograph, and we put it up on the wall. I think we managed to be able to.
We put it on the screen, darling.
On the screen, that's it. And all he'd done was take a photograph of a gate. And the thing that was so interesting about this gate was that it was right in the middle of a field.
Yeah.
It had no fence attached to either
Didn't have
end.
anything there.
It was simply a meaningless gate. And I remember us talking about the fact that there comes a time in many people's lives, whether in faith or in all sorts of other areas, where you seem to have reached a gate, an entrance, which may be locked, as this one was, all barbed wire all over it and everything, and you think, oh dear, I can't go any further, and there's actually nothing attached to the gate. You can walk round it, you can investigate what lies beyond it, and I still have that image of the gate in my mind now.
I'd forgotten, you're right, the bolt was very firmly covered in barbed wire, so you couldn't open it, but
That's
you could
right,
walk round it.
Yeah.
Yes.
And aside from the gate, there was a vast field to explore.
Exactly.
So just explore the vast field, for goodness sake. And I don't think I mean by that I'm going all woolly. I don't think I know anyone who's more orthodox than I am. But I'm just so excited about the stuff we don't know, the stuff we haven't explored.
Absolutely.
And everyone knows, those who know me know, I love that quote by, I can't remember his first name, someone will have to correct me, the poet Rumi, who at one point says something like, I haven't got the exact quote here, says, beyond all ideas of wrongness and rightness, there is a field, I'll meet you there. And suddenly the softness of that attitude just seeps through your soul, and you imagine Jesus perhaps saying to Peter, beyond all notions of betrayal and failure, there's a beach, I'll meet you there, and I'll cook breakfast for you.
Yeah.
And the impossibility of that.
Yeah.
But the gate was there. It was always there, always ready for him. So I love that.
Yeah, it was a challenge for people though, wasn't it? Because the things that he said, for the people who were eager to hear, were amazing. But for people who'd lived their lives, and some of them, I'm sure, very good people. You know, I sometimes think that the Pharisees and Sadducees are sort of lumped together as the baddies.
Yeah.
But I'm sure some of them were very, very good people who lived by rules and who tried their very hardest from when they got up in the morning to do their very best.
I expect they did.
But and so Jesus coming with these totally different ideas and visual aids, you know, calling the children to him, talking to women, teaching Mary while Martha was doing the meal, touching lepers, you know, they were sort of visual aids to what he was talking about, which was that the man-made barriers needed to come down. They needed to be looked at. People needed to access their brains and really think, what am I doing and why am I doing it?
Yeah, I love this one little tiny verse, isn't there, or part of a verse where Jesus has reappeared, and it says he opened their minds. Yeah. And if there ever was a time when we need to open our minds, it's now. Open our hearts perhaps as well, just to receive something we never really dared to believe could be possible. That, I mean, my great thing about God is nice and he likes me. I was so lucky 40 years ago to begin to understand that, and it's just beginning to now mean even more. Yeah, I thought about lots of things. I won't go through all of them, but I just, the fact that C.S. Lewis managed to finally get past the gatekeepers by writing children's fiction.
Yeah.
As he put it. And within that other world, a world which wasn't the world that was orthodox, and nor was it an allegory, but it was a different picture, an artistic picture of the possibilities that exist in the context of what we say we believe.
Yes, and I mean, very often it is other things that just enable you to open your mind. I mean, we've talked before about music. Certainly poetry for both of us is often a way that just a few words, they open your mind because they leave so many spaces for you to really think about it and and just let it swirl around in your mind, really, which is why when you said I can't access my brain, I was so worried, because I know that what happens in all of our brains is things just trundle around in there, don't they? Our thoughts, our fears, certainly, but also our imaginations and all the good things, really, all trundle around in there at the same time.
It needs a lot of thinking about, I think, and talking to people who are sympathetic about all this, but I think, I don't even quite know what track we're on, but I think it's the right one.
Well, I'm a bit worried at the moment. We keep saying we're still sounding the shallows. I don't know where we are at the moment. I mean, this new Omicron variant is terrifying all over again. And people are using words like tidal wave. They're using words like tsunami. They're using water words, really. The idea of possible overwhelmingness. And it has always been in the middle of a turbulent world that Christmas comes every year.
It does, yeah. This is a little bit from a poem I wrote some time ago, which we've always thought was worth doing. We never quite got right, I don't think. But I'll just read the bit right at the beginning and the bit at the end. It's called "And Jesus Will Be Born." On Christmas Day, the world will turn once more towards its end, but Jesus will be born. Yes, Jesus will be born, though the night enfolds like a black shroud, and the lies drive us from our peace and take us from our beds and bring us to our knees on the cold stone tiles of the kitchen floor. Jesus will be born. Yes, though the skies crack and the heavens sway and the heat dies in the earth's core and the last stitch in the last ditch appears when all is lost, a child's hand will reach up from the manger, a wounded hand, empty to catch our tears. For Jesus will definitely be born forevermore on Christmas Day. And I think that's worth exploring.
Of course it is. And we'll speak to you next week.
Yeah. See you next week.
Bye-bye.